If you want to understand what's really happened to UK house prices over the last 2 decades, then this chart tells the whole story. This is the average house price in the UK year by year from around the year 2000 up till today. And what's immediately obvious is how strong the overall trend has been. Prices haven't just increased, they've climbed consistently over time. At the start of the 2000s, average prices were relatively low compared to where they are today, but as you move along the timeline you can see that steady upward movement. Now it's not completely smooth. There are areas where growth slows down and even dips. For example, around the late 2000s you can see a noticeable flattening in the trend. That reflects the global financial crisis where the housing market paused and in some areas fell slightly. But what's really interesting is what happens after that. Prices recover and then continue to rise. And over the long term that upward trend dominates everything else. Short-term dips happen, but they don't fundamentally change the direction. As we move further along the chart, the slope begins to steepen. That means prices aren't just rising, but they're rising faster. And in the most recent years you can see that acceleration more clearly. This is where affordability becomes such a big issue, because wages haven't kept pace with this level of growth. So while this chart looks like a steady line going up, what it really represents is a growing gap between house prices and what people can realistically afford. Another important thing to understand is that this is an average. It gives the overall direction of the market, but it doesn't tell us how different the areas are behaving, because not every part of the UK follows this exact pattern. Some areas grow much faster than this average, while others lag behind. And that's where things get really interesting, because while the national trend is clearly upward, the reality on the ground is much more uneven. Some districts have surged far ahead of this line, while others have seen much more modest increase. So this chart gives us the big picture. It shows us that over time the UK house prices have risen significantly, despite economic shocks and short-term fluctuations. But to really understand where prices are rising the fastest, we need to go one level deeper. And that's where we start looking at individual districts to see which areas are actually driving this growth. So which types of properties have actually gained the most value over time? This chart breaks it down for you. So each bar represents a different property type: detached houses, semi-detached, terraced and flats. And what we're looking at here is percentage growth in average from prices from around the year 2000 right up until today. So this isn't about which properties are the most expensive, it's about which ones have grown the fastest. And straight away you can see there's a clear difference between them. Some property types have significantly outperformed others. Now at the top of the chart we've got the strongest performers. These property types have seen the biggest percentage increase in value. Over the last 2 decades, prices for these have multiplied several times over, and that tells us something important. Demand for these types of properties has remained consistently strong, and in some cases it's even accelerated. But what's really interesting is how the rest compare, because while all property types have gone up in value, they haven't grown at the same rate. Some have lagged behind noticeably, and the gap between them is where things get really interesting. It suggests that the housing market isn't just rising overall, but it's shifting in terms of what people value the most. Now think about what drives this. For example, detached and semi-detached houses typically offer more space, and over time, especially in recent years, space has become more valuable. That would help explain why certain property types have seen stronger growth. On the other hand, flats, while more affordable, haven't always kept pace in terms of growth. That could reflect changing preferences, as well as factors like service charges, location and demand patterns. Another key point here is that percentage growth tells a different story to absolute price, because even if a property is already expensive, it might not necessarily grow as quickly in percentage terms. So this chart is really showing us momentum, not just price level. And when you look at it this way, you can get a much clearer picture of where value has been increasing the fastest. So the key takeaway is this: all property types have gone up in value over time, but they haven't all performed equally. Some have clearly outpaced the rest, and that reflects deeper shifts in demand, lifestyle and how people choose where and how to live. And if you're looking to understand the UK housing market, then this type of breakdown is essential, because it doesn't just show that prices are rising, it also shows the structure of the market itself and how that's evolving. Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe. Let me know if you've got any property or property data related issues.